Cast. How are you, Devon Miller?
Hey, I'm doing wonderful as ever, busy as always, and that's the way I like it. So no complaints.
That's good to hear. Looking forward to discussing the subject matter of happiness with you. But before we do that, I'd love you to share with the listeners a bit about your background and who you are.
Yeah, so that's could be a very lengthy story, but I'll try and keep it at a reasonable scope. Kind of at the heart of it, I always have two dualities of things that I've pursued throughout my, at least my career, my working life, so to speak, which is, kind of day in intellectual property attorney. So I help a lot of startups and small businesses with patents, trademarks, copyrights, and other business-related things. Kind of in parallel to that, and right alongside of it, I also love to do startups and small businesses myself. So I've done quite a bit of a variety of different businesses, everything from a wearables company that did diabetes monitoring to a food truck that I do with my kids to another religious products business I also do with my kids and family and a few other ones. And so I always kind of tend to kind of split my focus between the startup and small business side hustle world myself, but with a full-time focus on being an attorney as well.
Wow, and enjoy running. I've read that in your bio.
Yep, I tend to usually clock in on a given day. Other than Sundays, I always take off, but otherwise, I usually do something around 20 to 24 miles a day. So it kind of depends on how early of a start I get, but usually kind of within that range. So, people always say, well, you must love to run or it must be something you're passionate about. And the honest answer is not particularly, but I do like to kind of stay in shape, and it's a way for me to decompress and kind of get my mind off of business and other related things and just kind of get out and be active. So it tends to work out well.
Yeah, it seems to suit you really well. I mean, that's a lot of mileage. It's a long way to run on a daily basis. So you obviously you must get significant benefits from doing it. And as you said, it sort of clears your mind and enables you to um, enables you to run so many businesses, I assume.
Yep, no, it's a time to decompress, kind of clear my mind, as well as a lot of times it's time for me to kind of not necessarily intentionally, but as the mind wanders, also have an opportunity to kind of think about things even related to the business that I might otherwise not have time as I'm otherwise busy. So on all fronts, it tends to check a lot of boxes and work out well.
And we're going to be discussing happiness. I'm really keen to understand from you, from your perspective, what happiness is to you.
Yeah, I mean that one's so you're talking with an attorney, and especially one that likes to use definitions. So it's always a bit hard. It's always one where you look at how do you define happiness because there's different ways that you could go about looking at that. I mean that could be everything from material happiness, right? So it could be looking at do I have financially the money and the ability to do the things I want financially, pay for house and living and vehicles and life's expenses, and I think that's a part of it. Vice versa. Or religious is also time or some religious in nature, and or that perspective oftentimes brings happiness. Family brings happiness, and so for me, I don't know that it's really as sometimes people try and separate it out and say, well, I'm happy in business and miserable in family, or I'm happy in my family and miserable with my job. I enjoy going to church, but I don't really like my wife and kids or my job. All those things you try and separate out. And I think it's really more of a combination of everything where, it is one where I look at it as, happiness is being, happy at your job. Not that every day is a perfect day. Same thing with your family, wife and kids. Not every day are you having the perfect relationship or you're at your best mood, or not every Sunday do you like going to church. But overall, it's kind of are checking all those boxes of, hey, do I have sufficient, for my needs, and even hopefully a little bit more so to have some fun with? Do I have a good relationship with my wife and kids and have a balance there? And then do I have a good relationship with God as well? And if I can kind of be most of the time hitting on those pretty well, then life tends to be pretty happy.
Yeah, so it's like the sum of the parts for you. It's overall contentment. It's not you're not settled with having one area of life really good and everything going well, and another area not so good. It's more that balance of ensuring that all aspects of your life are in an area of, I guess, where you want them to be.
Yeah, and I don't pretend to be perfect on any of them. There are times in life where, I probably work too much, and my family, suffers, or I don't have the time and attention to them. Or same thing, times where I have a greater amount of faith, or I'm, more religious or otherwise focused on that, and times where I'm less. So I don't know that it is ever. I've reached that perfect balance where I just am hitting on all cylinders all the time. But I think that to the degree as much as I can get those in balance, those are are times I tend to be the happiest or and have the most joy in life.
Yeah, and so you have that level of awareness so that you know that if one area is a bit down, it needs a bit of work. So if you've been, doing a lot of hard yards in your businesses and, family life is, they're sort of calling out for your attention, then, but you have that awareness to say, family is important to me. I'm going to now invest some time and pick that up a bit.
Yeah, and I even think vice versa, goes a little bit against conventional. So it's because the old cliches, well, money can't buy happiness, and I buy into that to a degree, but I also have the perspective of it's really hard to be happy if you're poor. And I'm not saying you don't have to have tons of money, but if you're worrying about paychecks, where is the next meal going to come from? How am I going to have a roof over my head? It puts a lot of strain on a lot of parts of your life. It's hard to have a good family relationship when you're living out of a vehicle or out of a car and those things. I think there is a balance, and a lot of times when you're saying money can't buy happiness, I look at it as there's almost kind of a threshold limit of you have to at least have a amount of money within your life to cover the needs and the things that that are necessary, and then it has a diminishing return. Meaning you can get a lot more money, you don't get a lot more joy. You still can have fun having toys, but it's kind of that again going back to balance of there is still on that financial aspect. If I don't focus on work at all and I have zero money coming in and no paycheck, I can have a great family and a great religious life. Life is still going to be very stressful and very hard because you're not covering all the needs. And so I think that, I said, kind of reiterating that balance between all of them.
100%, and the research certainly backs up what you are saying there in terms of that basic level of security needs to be met. It's that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So you need to have that shelter, the food, and feeling secure in order to accentuate and experience more contentment and satisfaction with life. If those basic needs are a struggle, then it's really hard to, I guess, feel content and satisfied. So, 100% agree with what you're saying there and sharing in relation to you need a certain level of security before you can really experience high levels of happiness or more contentment. In terms of
Yep,
what are
absolutely.
your what are your mates of happiness? In other words, I know you're in the US. Your companions of happiness. So the things that enable you to experience more happiness. What is it for you?
So if I were to reflect back or kind of echo back your question, kind of what are the things that tend to bring me happiness or that bring joy within the life and a little bit more specificity? Is that kind of the question?
Yeah, your companions, the things you lean on, like you mentioned, exercise is obviously one, and I think you see that the benefits of exercise is really freeing up some headspace to really reflect on what you're doing and whether it's going well or what needs to be done to improve things. And so I can see that your running every morning is one of your companions in terms of enabling you to have a more fulfilled life because it enables that reflection time.
Yeah, no, and probably it reflects a little bit to what I'd hit on. So yeah, certainly, for me personally, just to have from, I have to have a time that I'm able to unplug, that I'm not having, other demands in life or having to think about things or always being on a call or emails or even, dealing with wife and kids. Love my wife and kids, but there's still stresses in that, and I have to have a period where I can just unplug, not think about anything. and just go out and enjoy. So running is certainly one. On the flip side, being with my wife and kids, is a mode of happiness. And so, in other words, now there is a balance to that. Just being there doesn't generally or tend to suit that need if I'm otherwise distracted or otherwise have a lot of things on my mind. So if I have a particularly stressful day at work, or I have a lot of things I have to get done, or to-do lists, or just generally worn out, tired, and unplugged, that doesn't really bring that joy or that mode of happiness as much as when I'm engaged. Sometimes it will be helping kids with homework. Sometimes that's also stressful, but a lot of times it's joy, or it brings joy to help them to do well in school. Reading with them, we do or play a lot of family games. Sometimes we'll go out and have a few days away. We're not a big believer in huge vacations that are lavish, but we'll even just do small getaways where we can have some time just to be with the family and really away from everything else. Kind of on the family side, that always tends to bring joy and is a mode of happiness or companion of happiness. Religious side is probably one where everything from doing daily scripture reading to attending church on a weekly basis. I also donate a portion of my paycheck to the church, and I think that gives a balance of not solely focusing on money and looking at others. So those are kind of a few modes of happiness. And even on the business side, mode of happiness, I think it's finding the focus of what you enjoy. For part of the earlier on part of my career, I worked for a large law firm. It was top ranked law firm, had multiple offices, lots of attorneys, well recognized as far as the name side. And yet, while all and I worked for name recognizable clients like an Amazon or an Intel or Red Hat or Ford and others, and yet that wasn't really the focus that I wanted for my life and for business, and it wasn't the type of clients I wanted to work with. So that's kind of where I shifted to be or start my own law firm, which is I can now still doing the same work, but for the clients and kind of the setup and the arrangement and the focus as I want tends to also be the mode of happiness. And so setting up work such that it's not like I don't have to work hard and don't have to deal with the stress of work, but at least having that focus of here's the type of people I want to work with, the type of work I want to do, tends to also be a companion to happiness.
Yeah, so that freedom and choice is obviously important to you, and when you've got more freedom and like I know running brings a sense of freedom, you running your own business brings a sense of freedom, and that ability to be able to choose who you work with and when you work and things like that is certainly a really important part of contentment and happiness to you.
Yeah,
And you mentioned, when you're sharing like that, helping your children with their homework, there's a sense of fulfillment there. And I was wondering if that's like that sense of giving back, like you do with the church, in terms of a proportion of your salary or proportion of your income is going back into the church that are doing, that's doing something with that money to help others. And I think that's sort of that, helping your children is that you're helping them grow and develop, and it gives that return in terms of there's meaning and purpose around what I'm doing here, and I can see that.
yeah, and I think kind of just to build on that, I think with the giving to children, it's a little bit different. Giving to the church monetarily at least, and there's some time or sometimes time involved in other volunteering. But on the even with the giving or to the children, that one also you get to see kind of a more direct correlation, which is you get to see, hey, if I help them with their schooling, with their grades, they tend to click. It tends to make sense, and then you get to see, oh, they did better on their tests, or they did better on be able to perform and do well in school. And so there's an overlap of kind of that giving and donating of the time and getting it beyond just what is something that is just directly to the benefit of me, but as opposed to the church, which is, hey, I'm just giving this to God and to the church, and whatever they are deemed to be worthwhile to spend the money on, great. I feel like I'm supporting it. On the family side, helping with the kids and the homework on that, it also kind of has a little bit more of an immediate feedback, which is also has a bit of a different perspective as far as where it's beneficial.
Yeah, it's that more tangible impact that you're having. Whereas, yeah, it's I guess giving the money away and not knowing really where it's going. Um, yeah, you don't have that real tangible effect as to the impact it's having. Whereas you're having a real impact by coaching your children through their homework and then seeing them, do well in their exams or in their assessments, and you actually see that more tangible influence of the effect you're having by giving your time.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Is there anything else you'd like to share? Any other insights that you've realized over time, over the course of your career, over the course of your life, things that you once thought, like I guess you touched on one of them, which is money can't buy happiness. It's probably a myth that you sort of initially when you're growing up you might have thought, yeah, the more money I have, the happier I will be, and then you've realised as you've increased your net worth or your income that it does helps to a point, and then it's that law of diminishing returns thereafter. Is there anything else that you've come across during your career or life that you've found that has been helpful or unhelpful?
As I said, it kind of ebbs and flows probably earlier on in life and for a good period of time. My focus tended to be I probably worked too many hours and spent time on the other two areas a little too less or a little less. And even when I started my own business, I think, when you watch the movies or the TV shows and everything else, you kind of get a false sense of, oh, you'll start your own business, you'll work a couple hours a week, and the rest of the time you're on the beach or you're having lunch with everybody, and money's raining down from the skies and life's perfect. Not the case for 99.9% of people. That's not how it tends to work out. But the one thing that I found, at least especially on the business side, doesn't have to be if you're doing your own startup or small business, but it's kind of more so when I came to the resolution is you're always going to have more fires to put out than you have time to put the fires out. In other words, there's always going to be on the business side. There's going to be a demand for your time. The trade-off is those always tend to be more urgent. In other words, hey, I got to get this done today, or the client's demanding, or I have this deadline, or whatever the case may be. And so you always kind of tend to push hey, I'll do the stuff with the family on another day, or I'll do the stuff on the religious side another time, because those ones are easier to push down the road. And so while that, it can have a sense of urgency, you'll get to the point where you push those down forever to the point where your sole focus is just on the business side. And so for me, I had to kind of come to the realization that there's always more fires to put out. I'm going to get into the office. I'm going to put out as many fires, get as much as I can accomplished and done. And yet, when the workday is over, I need to unplug and spend the time with the family, spend the time on the weekend or on myself and on the religious side and on the family. And really, I'm going to get back into the office the next day, and there's still going to be those fires that are waiting for me, and there's still going to be plenty to get done. And so, I always look at it kind of as you have to have that a bit of the perspective of fires to put out, put as many as you can out each day. Now, if the building is burning down and it's something where you have to address, you can certainly, make that as an exception, but you shouldn't make the exception of the rule of you're always putting out fires, because they're always going to wait for the next day. So that's kind of probably the one other takeaway that I've tended to find.
That's terrific insight. I find that really valuable in terms of you've learnt that through experience, and you've addressed it and realised that starting a business isn't a fantasy. There's certainly plenty of challenges, and it takes time, and as you said, you'll encounter plenty of problems to solve, but those problems will always be there. Those challenges will always be there, and you can't just keep putting off things that are not so urgent but very important. And you've more found that balance, or you've found something that works better than what you were doing in the past.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome, Devon Miller. Really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your insights on happiness. How can the listeners best connect with you?
Yeah, few different ways to connect, kind of depending on what they want to connect with. So one is, if they want to, so on the legal side, if they do have patents or trademarks or other legal related questions, I offer free 15-20 minute consultation. So if they want to connect on that front, they can just go strategymeeting.com, and that links to my calendar is an easy way to grab some time. Generally on social media, so I know we have accounts on everything. The one that I tend to be most active on is LinkedIn. So meetmiller.com, MEET, so just meet me, meetmiller.com. That links right to my LinkedIn profile. is an easy way to connect there. The last one is if they just want to kind of check out more about the law firm and kind of what I do on that front, they can go to lawwithmiller.com. So kind of just a rehash. If they want to grab a consultation, go to strategymeeting.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn is meetmiller.com, and my general website is lawwithmiller.com.
Fantastic, and I'll certainly have those shared in the show notes so the listeners can go directly there. Appreciate you putting aside your very valuable time and coming on and sharing your insights on happiness. And I just wanted to also thank the listeners for your continued support. And please share this with others. Share this with others that you think that could learn something from Devon, and in particular those that are hardworking and probably not putting time into other areas of their life. They can get some terrific insights from Devon in terms of what he's learnt from his experience. So thank you once again, Devon, and thank you, listeners.